Okay, in this video, I show how to use SageMath to do the elementary row operations. And just as there's 3 elementary row operations, Sage has the following commands for them. So we have a matrix A, or whatever the name of your matrix is, maybe it's M or whatever. And then the matrix, any matrix has these associated methods that are associated. So we've got swap rows, I and J. So that will just swap rows I and J of your matrix A. Then A dot add a multiple of row I comma J comma S replaces this first row mentioned here, I, with, by adding to it S times row J. And then finally, A dot rescale row just rescales row I by S. And then an important convention that's followed in SageMath and Python and computer science in general is that rows and columns are counted starting with 0, not 1. And so the first row is row 0. So if you wanted to refer to the first row in one of these, like one of these commands here, the I would be 0. So if you want to swap rows, the first 2 rows, you would do A dot swap rows 0 and 1, 0 comma 1. Okay, anyway, so then let's show you how to find the reduced row echelon form of some random matrix here that I've made up. Okay, so to enter this matrix into SageMath, use this command here. So matrix, well, set A equal to the matrix, and I want to have rational entries. So that's why I choose QQ. And then this here is a 3 by 4 matrix. It has 3 rows, 4 columns. And so that's what the 3 and 4 refer to. And so then I just enter in one big square brackets the entries of our matrix separated by commas going along each row. So 3, 1, negative 4, 2, that's what's there. And then just continue on. 7, 2, 5, 6, the next row, and then 0 to 11, 1, the next and final row. Okay, so then I hit enter, or well, actually shift enter, or hit run. I've already done that. And so then, nothing, you'll see nothing, but that's because just internally A has been assigned this matrix. And then if you want to see what A is, type A and then hit shift enter, and you get this. And yeah, this is the matrix we want. All right, so now let's go about zoom in a bit. Let's go about row reducing this matrix. So one thing I noticed is I can get a pivot 1 by subtracting off twice the first row from the second row. Now, it's going to be a little difficult to refer to the first row and second row. Instead, what I'll do is call it by the row number using the counting convention in Python or SageMath. Namely, the first row I'll call it row 0, second row I'll call it row 1. So I want to replace row 1, I'll say the same, that's the second row, by negative 2 times row 0. And again, row 0 is the first row. So negative 2 times the 3 becomes negative 6. And when I add that to the 7, it'll turn into a 1. So I'll get a pivot 1. Okay, so I do that command and then type in A to see what has happened. And yeah, we see that the row 1, 1, 0, 13, 2 has changed. The other 2 rows have stayed the same. And okay, so then we want to swap, now that we have a pivot 1, we want to swap rows 0 and 1. So that's what I do here, and that's what has happened here. We've now got this pivot 1. Now I want to use this pivot 1 to make turn this 3 into a 0 by replacing, so I'm going to be replacing this row, sorry, let me just move this up a bit, replacing this row 1, that's what this means, replacing row 1, by adding to it negative 3 times row 0. Because the negative 3 times row 0, that will turn this pivot 1 into a negative 3, and when I add it to this positive 3, it'll turn into a 0. And so that's what's happened here. And so again, row 1 has changed, and I've got this pivot, the 0 here, and so I've cleared out 0, so column 0 is beneath the 1. Okay, great. Next, so I'm all set in column 1. Now I've got to move on to column 2. And conveniently, there's already a pivot 1 here. And so then I want to turn this 2 into a 0 by replacing row 2 by by adding to it negative 2 times row 1. So that's exactly this command here. And so when I do that, I turn that 2 into a 0. And again, row 2 has changed. The other rows have stayed the same. All right, so now I've cleared out column 1. Actually, this is column 0, column 1. So a little tricky to keep the numbering like that. But anyway, okay. And so then what I want to do is rescale this 97 to make it a pivot 1. And so that's when I use the rescale command. Rescale row 2 by multiply it by 1 over 97. That will turn it into a 1. It turns this 9 into 9 over 97. Okay, and then now that I have a pivot 1, I'm going to use it to cancel the 43 first, or add out, turn it into a 0 by taking I'm going to replace row 1 by adding to it 43 times row 2. That 43 times the 1 will add this negative 43 and will turn that 43 into 0. Okay, and then also next I want to turn this 13 into a 0 by multiplying row 2 by negative 13 and adding to row 0. That's what's done here. We replace row 0 by adding to it negative 13 times row 2. Okay, so we've got a 0 here, and so now we've got the reduced row echelon form, and then Sage has a built-in reduced row echelon form, and we check it and compare the results, and yeah, we see this. Now you might ask, well, if it already has a built-in thing, why do we need to do this? Well, yes, you can use this reduced row echelon form, but it's just good practice if you want to kind of avoid having to do all these arithmetic calculations, or you want to check an arithmetic calculation you did by hand. Okay, I'll stop here.